What is your current relationship with the Prime Minister and his party president?
Sorry?
What
Come
is
again?
what is your current relationship with the Prime Minister and his party president? I believe you meet both of them very often. These meetings have increased in the past few months in terms of frequency.
So, I haven't met or talked to the Prime Minister after I formally left his office in, to the best of my recall, it was March 2015.
That's a lie.
I'm telling you. I'm coming to it. Between 15th of March 2015 till last year when I lost my mother, she was in ICU, so Prime Minister, he called, he was kind enough to call. In between, for all the speculation, there has been no connect either from his side or from my side. In between, I was not in touch with him.
Fair enough.
So the conversation or the reconnect happened when my mother was almost on her deathbed. He called, and since then we have been talking. I've met him many times, and that is it.
Talking about what?
I told you at the beginning, if I'm sitting with the Prime Minister, he's a political leader.
But he's a busy man as well.
It will be about the government schemes, it will be about whatever. He's the boss, I'm nobody. Whatever he chooses to speak, I have to respond to it. So, if he asks me, what do you think of Ujjwala? I will tell what I think of Ujjwala.
Has he mentioned the word Ghar Wapsi?
No, not to me.
I'm asking. It's a fair question, since you're here.
In his opinion, I was entitled to do what I did. If I ever choose to come back, he's more than welcoming, and I'm grateful to him for that, to have that view. But specifically, we are not discussing about whether you are coming back or going out. He's too big a person. With the Prime Minister, you don't discuss coming back or going out.
What do you discuss with him is what we want to know. And you are taking us round and round in circles.
You ask people, am I taking you around in circles?
But let's take a vote on this one. All right.
Okay. So why don't you break and then ask, and I'll try my.
No, it's a simple question.
Ability to answer what he, like any political leader, would talk about politics. What I think, what I hear, what the situation like, what are the government schemes that people are happy about, what are the schemes that could be done, what could be bettered, whether what he hears, probably he would like to hear from me, my opinion about the general conversation that happens in the country about in and around political affairs. And that's a lot of topic to talk.
No Ghar Wapsi.
Sorry? We can't go anything beyond that. I've given you, I've tried to give you...
And with Mr. Amit Shah?
He's the same.
He's not the Prime Minister. Governance is not his concern. His concern is the party, elections.
But these are linked. Governance and elections are not separated. Elections will be fought based on governance, their record, what they promise, what they've delivered, how people see it. And I personally have not found much difference between the line of discussion or the questioning or the queries that come from one or the other. It's almost the same. Maybe when Prime Minister is speaking, he would be speaking more on the government side about the schemes, and when Amit Shah is speaking, maybe he would be speaking more about the party. But net, it's same.
On the basis of what you said this evening, if I were to ask you what you tell them, you will say it's privilege, right?
Sorry, come again?
If I were to ask you what you tell them.
I tell them with whatever little understanding I have, which is not much compared to them. They are in politics for the number of years which is my age, equivalent to my age. So what can I tell them which they don't know? And they have a huge army of people, party, people who can bring scientific information, assessments. So what someone like me can add, maybe whatever I say, whatever I know and I say, choose to talk to them, they use it for the triangulation of some of the information which they would already have. I don't think I'm bringing something new to them which is unknown or not understood by them. I think I would be naive to believe that.
I think we're running out of time here. I have two last questions. What has taken you so long to come out and speak in public with a journalist on record?
Because I frankly, for all these years, even when ISB guys approached us, I told, and you can check with them, that I don't think I have enough to talk. I don't think I've done anything significant to come and talk or to lecture about. I'm as small a student as you are. If any one of you go and choose to do what I'm doing, probably many of you would be better than what I'm able to do. So I never felt the need to come out and say things as if I have learned. If any one of you would have followed, I even tried, someone persuaded a friend of mine to write a book. And when we went through some of it, I realized that I have got not much to tell. Because if I write what I have been through, then it becomes tell-all kind of masala, gossip. There's nothing valuable which I could write as my understanding or part of wisdom which I want to share, which could be productively be used by others. How a campaign was thought or what one does, what is the daily routine. If I choose to write about that, it's not something that will stay for long. And that's why I dropped the idea of writing a book. So that is one of the reasons why I have never choose to speak on any platform. Journalists, I'm still not convinced that I would be talking to journalists on record, but going to...
You are talking to one on record right now.
No, but I am talking to the
it's all
colleagues
going on
in
record.
ISB where journalists happen to be a moderator. I'm not talking to Shankarsan, the journalist from Telegraph. I'm talking to someone, the colleagues, the friends at ISB, and that's how I see it. It's learning both way. And that's the reason I specifically requested them to keep it interactive, because I want to hear from them. And
one last question before we throw this open to the House. 2014 Modi, 15 Nitish,
I knew this is
Congress, UP, Bihar, then two-timing. Now, 2019, who are you batting for? I mean, the question is so obvious, but I wanted this to be the last question. Who are you working for in 2019?
Frankly, if you want to believe me, I really don't know. If it is two-timing, three-timing, I don't know what phrase you want to use it for.
As you said, we are journalists.
One thing is clear. I can be on record and say that for last 2 years or so, I've been trying to get out of this domain. And most probably, and to people who work with me, I've told that I will be quitting this post-UP. Only reason I did not do so is because UP results did not go our way. And for me, it would not have been right to leave the organization at the time when the going were not necessarily good.
Are you saying that Prashant Kishor is no longer available to political parties in their election backrooms?
I can say that. That in 2019, you would not see Prashant Kishor campaigning for anyone in the manner and form in which I have been campaigning in 4 or 5 years. But that's different from IPAC and me. I as an individual would not be campaigning in the same way I have done in the last 4 or 5 years. And this is a call which I took almost 2 years back. I didn't want to do it, but because of UP, I had to stay put to make sure that IPAC remains. And I'm glad that IPAC is where it is. They are almost 20 times bigger than what they were in 2015 in terms of manpower. They have got many more projects to choose from and work. And more importantly, they have right set of people who can better the work which they have done with me. I'm sure they will do much better. There is a right leadership there, and they will take this forward, and they will make it much bigger than what I could ever imagine for IPAC. But personally for me, I want to leave this space for new people to come to do what they could do better than me, and I'm sure they will. And I want to do something which connects me to the grassroots, which takes me back to the grassroots. I'm 41, and I want to spend another 10 years, at least 10 years, if not more.
This country is full of grass. Which part of the country is grass are you going to?
Back to the grassroots.
Which grass?
Most likely, I will go back to my own state, where the grass is much known and familiar to me. So it could be either Gujarat, where I have worked and learned the tricks of the trade, or
could be
my
Bihar.
birthplace, which is Bihar, where I go and I work there. But you would not see me campaigning in 2019 the way you saw before, for good or bad.
Are you saying you're joining politics?
Did I say that? Anyone heard
I'm asking. You're saying you're joining public life.
Now you know the story before you came to the...
It's already,
how the speculation goes on.
I will tell you why I'm asking this. I will tell you why I'm asking this, because before we came here, 2 hours on social media, it's been burning with Prashant Kishor to join politics. And since that question has already been thrown up in the media space, whatever you think of it, I'm asking you, those people have not asked you, who are putting out those stories have not asked you. I have an opportunity to ask you, are you joining politics?
If you go by what media says, or what social media chatter is, then I worked with Modi, mera ghar wapsi bhi ho gaya, I've joined Congress, I have worked with every possible political party or leader which possibly you could think of. So that much value for what media has speculated a couple of hours before, because why did he choose to speak after 5 years? There has to be a reason. And that reason has to be, okay, now he's joining politics. Come on. I choose to work because I like ISB. I admired ISB. I wanted to be part of ISB. 16, 17 years before, when ISB was conceptualized, when it was being put forth, we as a student, we looked and aspired to be part of ISB. Because one other reason could be because I do think that I'll not be doing campaign. So I thought, okay, this is the right opportunity to come and speak, and this is the right platform. Media just got added to it. I know some media friends are here, and then Delhi and Bihar and whoever has written this, that there has to be a reason. He doesn't do anything without any reason. If he is speaking, there has to be a reason. If he has met Modi, that means Ghar Wapsi has to happen. If he has gone and met Rahul, that means now he has finally decided to be in anti-Modi camp. Now, I have been reading, hearing, and living with this for last 6 years.
But you have made, through these years, you have made exactly those transitions. So not all of it has been false. You have moved from Modi to Nitish to the Congress.
Yeah, but that was
back
not,
to Modi.
I told you why I moved, and
fair enough.
That was not something what media guessed. And I'm sure, I can tell you that much, that media will be wrong again. All I'm telling you that I want to go back and work with the people and at the grassroots, rather than working with the leaders. I've worked enough with the leaders. I worked, as you said, it was your word, that I work only with big daddies and meet. I've had enough, so I want to go back to the grassroots and try to learn in a new way whatever I could do. And for me, it's the right opportunity because I can leave IPAC in a safe hands. They will do very well, and they are very safely placed for another 2-3 years at least, whatever I can see.
Thank you, Prashant. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.
Throw this open to the House now, and if someone is going to...
Questions? First up is Shatakshi.
Yes, ma'am. Call me Prashant. Everyone calls me Prashant. You know, this whole data thing in an election context is overhyped, as much as we are overhyped. You don't win or lose election because someone has a set of data. I have heard the conversation that happened around this Cambridge Analytica, and strangely they talked about that they worked in Bihar in 2009. And a senior journalist called me to say, what is your take? And I told him that you just don't need any inside information. Just go back and look in 2005 how many Facebook users were there in India. Forget about Bihar. What Cambridge Analytica could do if not even 1% of population of Bihar was on Facebook or smartphone in 2009. And there's endless debate on television that who do they help? They help nobody. They just claim that they, maybe to gain more clients, on their website they were claiming that they have helped X, Y or Z. So I do not see data integrity from that point of view. Now coming back to how do we deal with it, is that we do not have data as such unless it is coming through a campaign. So the campaign data remains with the organization. So for example, when we say give a missed call if you support a cause or a leader, that person, the profiling of that person or the communication to that person largely remains with the campaign team with some protection obvious. But how that could be misutilized, frankly, I haven't thought through it, and I haven't seen, and I don't believe that it could be misutilized, that if I get BJP missed call data and I put to the Congress, what Congress can do? If I, it's about you going and convincing people. You can't convince people just because you have data or you have got some additional information about them. It helps. But it doesn't, it's not a game changer, not yet in India. All this machine learning, data analytics, this big phrase of big data, parties setting up analytical cells and all, they probably add some value, but make no mistake, they cannot change, they cannot have any bearing on the election outcome. Definitely not in the time which I see next 5 or 10 years. Maybe 10 years down the line it could be. Like smartphones in 2014, which is talked so much about, use of technology. We were working with 5 crore people having a smartphone. Now it's 35, 40 crores. So that way it has become very important. But having data about citizens, I don't think it would have meaningful impact on the election or your strategy in any way.
Okay. Thank you.
Next up is Akash Binjrajka.
So my question is around the same with what she asked, is that how do you see, or what kind of an impact do you see emerging technologies like the Neta app having on the oncoming elections?
I just see it as one more thing. Frankly, it's like the coffee and the froth. All what you hear, read, attribute to us, to yourself, to so-called these tech guys, tech gurus, social media, it's still the froth. Coffee is still somewhere else.
Coffee is here.
It's not something that can make a change. It's important. I'm not trying to downplay it. A lot of people see us as a social media guy, technology guy. I have not used laptop since Gujarat elections. And I have not used iPad also in the last 2 years or so. I don't see that as a big constraint for what I do or what I don't do. So this whole idea, a lot of people who came in Bihar would say, but where is your war room? But there's nothing. It's just a table and chair. People come with this notion that there will be machine, there will be a lot of people, because television they show it. What they show you as a war room is actually nothing but the call center, which is right at the bottom of the hierarchy of the organization. Campaign setup, they are at the bottom. So you see, especially on the Hindi news channels, with all due respect, look at so-and-so war room, how people are calling, how data is being used. That is nothing but the call center. An ISP guy is not put that phone and talk 10 years, 10 hours, 12 hours. If I do that, you will run away. no one does that. It is about people. It is about understanding them. It is about connecting their aspirations with what leaders are promising or should promise or could promise. And then making it a bit more engaging, the format. In terms of format, engagement formats, you could be a little bit innovative. But beyond that, all this war room, machine learning, we are still far off. Make no mistake, this country has got 800 million people who doesn't make 100 rupees a day. 800 million people, that's almost like 70% of your voter, does not make 100 rupees a day. So what influence you can have on them using Facebook? They are struggling to put the bread in the plate every evening. I don't think they have time to surf the net or spend 8 hours on Facebook or share the picture. There is also 300 million people who are actively on social media, smartphone, Facebook and all. But in terms of vote, everyone has got the same vote. So if you are in a smart election advisor or political aide, you rather focus on 800 rather than putting too much or being consumed by this, winning over this 300 million.
Next up is Janakan Manivanan.
Hi. Hi, Prashant. Here.
Oh, yes.
Now, how did you manage to collaborate with in-party strategists, and how open they are to the external agencies like you? Because generally what we read in news that you have the Führer's permission, the leader's permission, and the other next rank leaders are averse towards the external agencies.
So this is another thing which you need to understand. There is nothing called external and internal, at least the way I have worked. I was living with the person I'm working with, so I'm more internal than any internal. So this is something that has been written about in the last couple of years. When you meet with the failure, people try to find reasons, retrofit their understanding. Oh, he was external, he was internal. No one talked about external, internal in 2014. No one talked about external, internal in Bihar. When something doesn't go right, then people come with these fancy ideas, look for the reasons and retrofit it. At least the way we work, because we are not charging a professional fee, we are not a vendor, then you are not external. You are very much part of whoever they are. You might not be, in one way you are external if you are not holding the party post. But in every other way, you are more internal than the party members themselves.
Next up is Anand Shekhar.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi Prashant. So my question is, the majority of Indian democracy has seen people who have either been influential, powerful, rich, or goons, or all, dominating the Indian political scenario. And the common populace has largely, remained aloof of taking part in politics, as you rightly said, the kind of perception we have at our household regarding this. But of late, we have had initiatives like, let's say, the LAMP or the Chief Minister's Fellowship, or let's say the Telangana or the AP government recruiting from ISB to work with the political and bureaucratic ranks. What do you think, how should the government, or should it engage with the educated youth to take part in the politics? If yes, then how should they proceed?
Sometimes people ask that a lot of our colleagues have gone out and have set up something. Someone mentioned Neta app, someone is working with BJP, someone is working with some other party, and they ask, how do I feel about it? I tell you, I feel great about it. I take great pride in the fact that someone who has worked with us is able to go and stand on his or her own feet, influence or convince a leader who probably has spent as many years as the age of the guy and willing to listen to him or her. So slowly you see how many people today are able to work in this domain. Whether they call it PK team or because they need, it's a Modi effect, because they have seen him winning a campaign. But there is a definite greater appetite among the elected representatives or those who want to get elected to appreciate and engage with professionals. And that is one good thing we take pride in. How they should go about it, all these CM fellowships are actually linked to leaders' assessment that if they have a lot of young people, they would help the better branding, positioning of their themselves or their government or their schemes. It's a slow process, but hopefully in years to come, it's only going to get better. One worrying sign is the under 40 MPs, the proportion of people who are representing some sort of dynasty, because you realize, probably you do not pay attention to this, but almost 2/3 of less than 40 years MPs belong to second or third generation politicians, which is not good. Which is not good. So if everyone says that politics is bad, then as the phrase goes, and this is the most used phrase in IPAC and CAG, that if you don't choose to participate in politics, be ready to be governed by your inferiors.
Next up is Anusha Rajgopalan.
Hi Prashant. My question goes out on the campaigning strategy part of it. So what is your opinion on conducting a debate, a televised debate between the leading candidates of a PM or a CM election, much like the US style presidential debates?
It would be great. The problem is, as a country, we haven't witnessed it, but I have no doubt in my mind that it will happen. How much time it will take, I don't know. One of the excuses party give to avoid such debate is that we do not, because we have a parliamentary system, they say that technically or statutorily they are not forced to declare a prime minister candidate. So the problem becomes who competes with whom. But I'm sure in times to come, with increased awareness, gone are the days when people come out with a manifesto, do a couple of rallies, and people are willing to vote just because you are so and so. So it's a good idea, should happen. I'm sure there is huge support for this. Political parties have to walk this tough path. They will cross it in due course as the pressure builds.
Thank you.
Next up is Harsh Garbiyal.
Hi, Prashant. So it's slightly a long question, so please bear with me. So I want to know, so despite the birth of institutions such as CAG and now IPAC, ground level realities strongly suggest that much hasn't changed post the implementation of the Mandal Commission's recommendations in the early 90s. By that, what I mean is, especially when it comes to populist agendas that regional parties are using, which mostly revolve around caste, and they use that as the primary vehicle to cross the finish line in most of their campaigns. So do you think the prevailing equilibrium can change? And how do you plan to change it simply from a campaign strategy and execution point of view?
So caste is a reality, and much to the dislike of most people here, I do not see it as a problem element. Social congregation is part of the reality of human being. It is called caste in India, it could be called something else in US. But it's there, everywhere. We as Indians, we need not be defensive about it. That is not to say that caste systems should be promoted, but just because party or people seek or vote on caste line is in itself is not a bad thing. It's democracy, You want to vote for someone who you believe would give you the access, would deliver what you want them to deliver for yourself or for your community or your neighborhood or whatever you want to call it. In terms of our ability to make the change at the grassroots, we haven't been able to do much because we are not the one who are part of the governance. But I tell you what is the positive in this and what helps us remain motivated and should remain for the people who choose to run organizations like IPAC or many others which has come now. Look at Bihar. In Bihar elections, Mr. Modi as the Prime Minister and the leader of the BJP promised 1.5 lakh crore of package, a special package for the state of Bihar. To counter that as campaign, we came out with what we called at that time, and it's still called, Nitish ke Sat Nischay, 7 resolves of the Chief Minister, with the financial outlay of 2.3 to 2.4 lakh crore over 5 years. So basically, before the election, almost 60% of Bihar budget is tied to these 7 resolves or the commitments which he has made, that if you vote for me, if I happen to be your Chief Minister, these are the 7 things we will deliver. And these 7 things are basics, what people wanted. We went to almost 30,000 villages in Bihar and we surprised ourselves with the findings which we got. People were not asking for industrialization or white collar job. People were asking for drainage. People were asking for running water, piped water. And I tell you, the situation is not very different in many other states. I'm in Andhra, and drainage in rural Andhra is still the most single biggest problem which people want governments to solve, which many of us, or I would say most of us, would get it wrong if I have to sit in the room and decide what people want from the government. But just imagine for a second, sorry, I'm going tangentially, in your flat or your room, for one day the water doesn't drain. What kind of misery it will create in your life. Such is the problem. So we take pride in setting the agenda through the campaign, which is basically influencing how the 60% of the budget of government of Bihar, no matter who is the minister, no matter who is the government, whether he was with Mahagathbandhan, where he is with BJP now, the 7 resolves remains the same. And that is one more reason why in all our campaign, I think we as a group insist on leader making a commitment. So it's a Modi's commitment, Nitish's commitment, captain's commitment, because there is no escape. But after making that commitment and getting the vote, if you don't deliver, I'm sorry, we don't have any way. Like a voter, we don't have any other option but to wait till the next election. If he or she chooses not to deliver on what they committed, we can't do much. But once they make the promise, they do try. I would like to believe that they do try, but that remains at least the priority of the government. Whether they are able to implement it or not, that's something that only time can tell.
Next up is Santosh Shivakumar.
Hey, is it audible? Hey, Prashant. So the question is, IPAC works with parties that have conflicting ideologies, right? So how do you prove your credibility to parties that you can support them with the strategies for the election? Also, the second point being, there's a huge risk that you might get to know their internal strategies and not partner with the same party in the next election. So what do you do to avoid that?
It's not a challenge because we don't reach out to any party. If I have to go and pitch that I want to work for you, then all these issues come. The data secrecy, ideology, whether you'll be working in future with my competing party and all. It's not how it has worked, at least till now. It's parties they approach, sometimes it's mutual, and it's a mutual co-opting of the work. And once you work, then it is not, as I said in the response to earlier question, there's no internal, external thing. In terms of this, about about this ideology, I hear so much about, you don't have an ideology. It is like saying to a lawyer who has fought cases for 3 different clients with competing or different ideology, that lawyer does not have an ideology. That's not true. I personally, for the want of a better phrase, Indianized phrase, I would like to believe that I have an ideology which is closer to what in the West phrase is center-left. Because I do believe that government has a very big role in countries like ours. But I also want to put a caveat. Having an ideology is not necessarily same as being blinded by ideology. Make no mistake, those who talk too much about ideology, the leaders, it suits them for you to be blinded by the ideology. And it is not only true for the political leaders. The religious leader, the social leader, they want you to get intoxicated to some degree with this so-called ideology so that you lose the objectivity, you do not question them, you do not want them to be accountable. So I leave the choice to you, whether you want to be cynical about being ideologically wedded to a person or a group, or you want to have your ideology, but at the same time you also do not want to lose your objectivity. So if communists are ruling a state and they are not delivering on improving quality of service, how justified they are in asking you to keep voting just because you believe in communism? Do you want to subscribe to that? And then if they come across someone like me, they say, oh, you don't have ideology, but you have not delivered either. If you are true to your ideology, it also means delivering the services and the goods for the people. If you don't do it, why do you expect the supporter to remain wedded to you for times to come or for all his or her life? So yes, it's important to have an ideology, but it should not blind us to an extent where we lose our ability to question what is right and what is wrong.
Next up is Shraddha Raj.
Hi, Prashant. So my question is around the fact when you spoke about how it is about connecting to the people and understanding the people. So how do you condense all of the analytics that goes into the campaign strategy into one single message like Ab ki baar Modi Sarkar? That captures the imagination of the entire country. What is the thought process that goes behind coming up with the exact language and the message?
It's like, long back I met a lyricist, and he was giving me options after options, and I was asking him, how do you get it? How do you get it? If I sit in the room and try to think about a poem or a lyrics of a song, I can't do it in all my life. So it's something that happens, and make no mistake, most of the campaigns, the ideas, the messaging is not something that one individual has got it, whether it's me or one of my colleagues. It mostly, 9 out of 10 times, it's a function of group coming together and coming out with something, and we put it to the vote and people like it, then we say, okay, if it is liked by this set of people, then likely to be hit with masses as well. Ideas always are of the leader, by the way. It is not of yours or mine or anyone. But it comes through the churning. It's people like you, and they are very, very smart people who work with us. They come out with all these ideas. All the campaign which you would have thought of, the line which you mentioned or otherwise, it's not something which comes to my mind or I dream about it or I have a process through which I go and I get this. It basically comes from people who work, and we put together our head and we say, okay, this sounds lyrical, this sounds closer to reality, this is likely to work, and then we go and test. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work.
Dyuti Shukla.
I hope I'm not keeping you in this hall on the Sunday evening. How long we are going to be?
We have time, sir.
Okay. I don't want to spoil your Sunday.
Mike, you was working as a public health expert. What made you become a political campaign manager? What would be the reasoning behind this?
I always wanted to do public health. That's what I knew, that's what I did for my living, and that is what brought me in touch with Mr. Modi in Gujarat in 2011-12. When we started, the idea was to work on public health / malnutrition. As I told earlier, it just so happened that it progressed into something else. And then whatever has happened is largely known to the people. But given the option, I would love to go back, and still I think malnutrition is one problem where people should pay more attention, governments. It's a long-term thing. It's not glamorous. It doesn't give you vote. It doesn't make you form a government in 2 years or 5 years. It's a generational problem. So no one pays as much attention as they should.
One last question from Jayant.
Hi, Prashant. In our country, we see a certain set of people aligning their aspirations with the ruling party, in this case BJP, and certain set of people aligning their aspirations with Congress, and as you have seen with Jagan Reddy, some regional parties. So, do you see an overarching identity of all these aspirations of regional parties and opposition parties like Congress, aligning in one overarching identity against BJP in 2019? And if you foresee that possibility, will it give a credible challenge to Modi Jagannath?
It's something that is being debated every day on television. So my response is not going to be any more insightful than what most of you already know. It's difficult. It should not happen also, because why do you come together if you do not have a common idea, program, messaging, just to defeat someone? People will not buy it. That's my sense, but I could be wrong. Whether it should happen, could happen, should, definitely no. Could, possible. You are desperate, you see no possibility of standing on your own, you collaborate with someone, with making some adjustment. Whether that will last, whether that will be accepted, rewarded by the people, that's anyone's guess. But not an ideal thing to do.
Thank you, Mr. Kishore and Mr. Thakur.
Thank you.
Thank you, it's been a pleasure.